Hi, I'm Akila Wilson. This is Straight Answers and Gospel channel. We are in this series called Christian Worldview, and we are learning about different attributes of God and how that shapes our worldview. That's what we are looking into. So last week video we spoke about chesed, God's mercy, grace, loving kindness, steadfast love, all these words put together in one term, that is chesed in Hebrew. We spoke about it and we explained that it is very personal, it is very loyal love of God, and it is eternal. And also we spoke about how it is independent of what we do and what we don't do. So that is what is chesed we learned about in last week video. So in this video we are going to be talking about how the faith in this chesed, God's mercy, is going to shape how we conduct our life. That's what we are going to look into. So first of all, let's see, when we say God's mercy or chesed is personal, how is that going to shape our life? So if God's chesed or mercy is personal to me, then I don't have to compare my life with anyone. I don't have to compare my call with anyone. I don't have to compare my sufferings with anyone. So it is all very unique to me. For example, so in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, Paul is asking God to take away this ailment from his body. And he's not praying one time, he's praying 3 times about it. But then what God is responding. And he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." He's saying, my grace is sufficient for you. That means the grace that God has for us is very personal, and it is sufficient for us, no matter what personal issues that we are going through. Paul's issue here is not something very spiritual, it is not eternal, it is something physical that's very temporal. And also it is not a common issue that every Christian had. It is only Paul's personal problem. And then God healed many people, and he chose to heal many people in his grace. But to Paul, in this particular issue, Paul is telling him that my grace is sufficient for you. So in our personal lives, when we are having suffering, when we have this particular call that is very hard, seem hard to fulfill, or maybe even our life in entire view, that we can think about it and say, like, why is it so different? You know, it is humanly to compare. But then when we understand this mercy of God is very personal to us, then we can stop comparing, and we can believe in this truth that God's grace is sufficient for this personal issue that I have, this personal problem that I have, this personal call that I am interested with, and this personal life that I'm walking every day. So God's grace is sufficient for us in a very personal level. That is number one thing that we can believe in. And second thing we can believe is that his love is independent of what we do and what we don't do. In Exodus 33:19, Bible talks about it like this. Exodus chapter 33 verse 19. Moses is asking God, wanting to see God, and God is telling him. Then he said, "I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion." That's what it says. It's beautiful. It says, I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious. It is very independent of that person's doing. So God will be gracious to whom he wants to be gracious. That's what the Bible talks about. So we don't have to be performing for God. We don't have to have this haunting thought of, okay, if I don't do this, if I don't pray this many hours, if I don't involve in this particular ministry, if I don't read the scriptures, these many chapters per day, then God is not going to be merciful to me. In anything in that sense. If I don't do this, whether God is going to be merciful to me or not. We don't have to do that, because this chesed is very independent of what we do and what we don't do. Like God says, I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious in Exodus 33:19. And also this grace of God is very eternal. And because of that faith, Romans chapter 5 verse 21 talks about it. Even so, grace might reign through righteousness to eternal life through Jesus Christ. Grace might reign through righteousness to eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. That's what it says. So it is for eternity. God's grace reigns to eternity in our life through Jesus Christ, and it is beautiful. So we can be so content. We can go into this one truth that God's grace is eternal, and we can just stay there so safely. We can confine there. We can be confident of that, and we can just be very, very content in that truth that God's grace is going to reign for eternity in my life. And finally, that God's mercy is loyal. Romans chapter 1 verse 5 talks about it. Paul talks beautifully like this. Romans chapter 1 verse 5. Through him we have received grace and apostleship. For what? For obedience to the faith, he says. So why is this grace even given to us? This eternal, independent, personal mercy or grace is given to our life for what? For obedience. It is true, God's mercy is eternal and we can confine in that. Yes, it is very independent of what we do and what we don't do, so we don't have to perform. And it is very personal, so we can so don't have to compare our life with anyone else. But however, it is all given to us because for obedience to the faith. So we can obey God. And that is chesed for a Christian life. And that is how it should shape our life. Anytime we have this personal issue, anytime we are going through this difficulty, we can say that God's love is so personal for me. His grace is going to be sufficient for me in this personal issue. And we can say, we can so confide and be confident and confirm to this eternal mercy of God. And we can stop performing because His mercy, His chesed is independent of what we do and what we don't do. Finally, all these graces so we can obey. So we love Him. And that is God's mercy for you. With that, we completed study of God's attribute. Now we will move on to who is man according to Christian worldview and how that shapes our worldview and things like that in the coming weeks. And before that, I wanted to also summarize what are the different attributes that we learned about God, and that will be the next video. Please come back to it, and thank you so much for you spending your time with us. May God bless you.